Her grandson blocked her after she missed one game. Meredith Jameson, retired educator and widow, didn't beg. Trevor, once the pride of her lineage, went viral with a fundraiser that painted her cruel. By nightfall, she'd rewritten her will, her legacy, and the definition of family. She'd paid for his dreams in silence. Now she'd bankroll strangers with character. And when he searched for what she owed him, the name on the check wouldn't be his. Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. The ache in Meredith Jameson's arm had mostly faded, but the disappointment lingered. It was supposed to be a routine flu shot. Instead, it knocked her flat for 2 days, just long enough to miss Trevor's home game, the one she'd promised him she'd attend. She hadn't even known he played that night. The schedule changed last minute, and by the time she checked the team site, he was already warming up. Fevered and dizzy, she'd tried to call from bed, raspy and apologetic, but her calls went to voicemail. Her texts stayed blue, then turned green. Then, nothing. The silence didn't hit her until morning, when she opened Instagram and saw nothing. No stories, no posts, no tags. She searched his name, Trevor Jameson, only to be met with the sickening line, "No user found." Her fingers hovered over the screen, blocked. By her grandson. She double-checked, refreshed, logged in and out, still blocked. At first, she thought it was a glitch. He couldn't really have... The landline rang. Her daughter's voice arrived tight, rehearsed. "He's just hurt, Mom. He said you promised and then ghosted." "I didn't ghost," Meredith said, gripping the kitchen counter for balance. "I had a reaction. I texted, 'I know, but he doesn't see it that way right now. Just give it space.'" Give it space. As if love were a balloon. Meredith hung up gently, then opened her laptop and logged into the university portal she hadn't touched in months. The bursar's dashboard blinked to life. Her profile, still listed as the sole financial sponsor, showed the latest tuition disbursement had gone through just last week. $18,900. Room and board, another $7,300. Meal plan, health insurance, campus fees, $2,150. She scrolled through 2.5 years of line items, tallying them in her head. A slow burn rose in her chest, not from the money, but from the absence of a single "thank you." Not even a quick "got it, Grandma." He had the energy to block her but not to thank her. She clicked, "Download full summary." A spreadsheet began populating. Meredith stood, walked slowly to her hallway closet, and pulled down an old shoebox labeled simply, Trevor. Inside were ticket stubs, photos, birthday cards. She dug through until she found it, one of her favorites. Trevor at age 12, courtside at his first NBA game. His braces gleamed beneath a wide, gap-toothed grin as he held up a signed foam finger. She remembered the cost, $200 for the seat, $30 for snacks. A small fortune back then. He hadn't stopped smiling the whole night. She stared at the photo now. His smile looked foreign. The boy in that seat wouldn't have blocked her. The man he became? He already had. She held the photo in both hands, studied it like a puzzle missing pieces. Then she whispered aloud, as if the quiet house might answer back. "Let's see what Courtside looks like without me paying." She didn't cry. She didn't slam anything. She returned the photo gently to the box, walked back to her laptop, and opened a new browser tab. NBA.com, greater than tickets, greater than premium seating. She hovered over the options. Courtside, 2 seats. She added them to the cart and clicked purchase. From the kitchen, her phone buzzed again, this time a text from her daughter. "Trevor says he can't get into his dorm. His keycard's not working. You know anything?" Meredith stared at the message. Her fingers moved slowly, precisely as she typed, "I know what blocking feels like." She hit send, closed the laptop, and poured herself a cup of chamomile tea. No trembling hands, no second-guessing. She didn't raise her voice. She raised the stakes. The next morning, Meredith woke earlier than usual, made coffee strong enough to bite, and dialed the bursar's office before their second ring. "Good morning, this is Kayla in Student Accounts. How can I help you?" This is Meredith Jameson. I'm listed as the financial guarantor on Trevor Jameson's account. I'd like a full itemized summary of every tuition, housing, and miscellaneous charge since the start of his enrollment. A pause, just long enough to let Meredith imagine the young woman on the other end blinking into her headset. Yes, of course. We can email that within the hour. Meredith gave a clipped thank you and hung up. She didn't pace. She didn't fume. She sat at her dining table, sipping from a chipped mug, staring out the window at the half-dead hydrangeas she never had the heart to replace. 46 minutes later, the email arrived. She clicked open the PDF. $76,410.82. Tuition, housing, meal plan, campus tech fee, laundry card refill, textbooks, student insurance, late-night library surcharge, a spring break travel exemption. Not one of them accompanied by even a digital thank you. She scrolled, line by line, eyes scanning with the cool precision of an auditor. She didn't blame Trevor for the costs. College was expensive. What cut deeper was how invisible her sacrifice had become. She pulled up her financial dashboard, clicked the tab marked Student Contributions, and hit Pause All Recurring Transfers. When the confirmation message appeared, she took a screenshot and emailed it to her financial advisor. Subject: Trevor Jameson Funding. Message: Stop all payments effective immediately. No explanation to be given. This is not a temporary pause. She didn't sign it with warmth. Just initials. MJ. Then she closed her laptop and pulled out her phone. NBA.com greater than tickets, greater than front row. She scrolled past a few nosebleeds, skipped the middle tiers, and tapped on 2 front row seats for the upcoming weekend game. The price made her eyebrows lift, then lower. She clicked purchase. To see someone, she murmured aloud, who doesn't ignore me. That evening, she dressed in black slacks and a steel gray blouse, hair pinned up neatly, and made a reservation at the steakhouse 2 blocks from the arena. She arrived early, let the host seat her in a booth by the window, and ordered the special with a glass of Pinot Noir. The waiter approached after her second sip. Young, kind eyes. Not Trevor's age, but close. "You waiting on anyone, ma'am?" he asked with a half-smile. Meredith stirred her wine. "Not anymore." He blinked, smiled politely, and stepped away. She took her time with the meal, ate slowly, read through a printout of the tuition invoice, line by line, between bites. She marked certain numbers with a red pen, drawing stars next to every semester she'd paid in full before the due date. Her phone buzzed again around dessert. "Daughter, Trevor says his keycard still won't work. They told him he's not cleared for housing. You know anything?" Meredith didn't respond right away. She finished her wine, folded the invoice neatly, and placed it into her purse beside a pen and a worn photo of 12-year-old Trevor courtside beaming. Then she typed back, "I know what blocking feels like." No emojis, no punctuation. She placed the phone face down, signaled for the check, and tipped well. When she stepped outside, the evening air was crisp, the kind that brushed along the collar like a dare. The stadium lights glowed in the distance. Music thumped faintly from inside. She didn't turn toward it. Instead, she walked the opposite direction, toward home, alone, heels steady, spine straight. The Venmo notification was waiting when Meredith woke up, an alert so casual it might have come from the dry cleaner. Trevor Jameson is requesting $68. Utilities. No message, no greeting, just a number and a smug little lightning bolt. Meredith stared at it over her morning coffee, black and unflinching. Her finger hovered over the screen for less than a second before tapping Decline. A prompt appeared. "Are you sure you want to decline this request?" She smiled, tapped yes. Then, without drama, she opened her laptop and drafted a new email. To trevor.jameson@universitymail.edu. Subject: Financial support status Trevor. As of this week, all contributions toward your tuition, housing, and miscellaneous expenses are paused. Please contact your academic or financial aid advisor for next steps. I will not be responding to text or app-based requests going forward. M. Jameson. She reread the message. Not cruel, not cold. Just clear. She hit send, then closed the lid, locked her phone in the desk drawer, and pulled down the worn accordion folder labeled Cards Plus Keepsakes. She hadn't opened it in years. Maybe not since her husband passed. Birthday cards, drawings from Trevor's early years, stick figures, crayon suns, misspelled grandma. She ran her fingers over each one. A card from his 8th birthday had a dinosaur on it, roaring over glittery volcanoes. Another from middle school, a signed photo of his basketball team and a note that said, "Thanks for the ride and the snacks." Then, nothing. The last card she found was from his 14th birthday. A typed message on a store-bought card. "Thanks. See you at the game." 5 years. No card since. She set that last one aside and picked up a blank sheet of stationery. Her handwriting was steady, deliberate. "Blocked doesn't mean erased," she wrote, but it might mean replaced. She folded it once, placed it behind the oldest card in the stack, and filed the folder away. Her lawyer answered on the second ring. "Ms. Jameson, good morning. I'd like to update my estate file," she said without preamble. "We're not removing anyone just yet, but we'll begin with a freeze." "A freeze?" "Yes. Full freeze on all distributions to Trevor Jameson until further review. Add a note, subject to conditional reinstatement." The lawyer was silent for a moment, then said gently, "Understood. Do you want a clause for alternate beneficiaries?" "Not yet," Meredith said, then paused. "But draft it, just in case." By that afternoon, she'd done something she hadn't in over a decade, walked into a local box office and bought herself a season pass, Courtside, Row 2, not the big NBA arena, but the Pro Development League, the team that played 2 towns over. Gritty players, loud fans, no pretense, real hustle. The clerk, a woman maybe her daughter's age, tilted her head. "Just one?" Meredith tucked her wallet back into her purse. "Yes, just one, all season." Later that evening, she pulled into the driveway of her quiet home and let the headlights linger on the garage door before cutting the engine. The porch light glowed like it was waiting to welcome her. She stepped inside, set her keys down, and placed the new tickets on her hall table like a badge. Then the phone buzzed in the drawer. One alert, a message from her daughter. "Daughter, he says you're being dramatic, that he didn't mean to block you forever. He's just under pressure. He wants a second chance." Meredith stared at the drawer. Didn't reach for it. Just sat down at the table and folded her hands. The house was silent. No shouting, no apology, no knock at the door. She looked at the blank chair across from her, Trevor's usual spot during holidays, then reached for the tickets again and placed one in front of it. "Next time," she murmured, "try paying attention before someone pays your bills." The living room was too warm. Meredith had turned the heat up slightly, a habit from winters past. But it wasn't the temperature that made her daughter shift in her seat and loosen the silk scarf around her neck. "I just think," Caroline began, with that careful tone people used before saying something offensive, "you're overreacting." Meredith didn't flinch. She was seated upright in her favorite armchair, navy upholstery against her back like armor. Between them, the coffee table held a single manila folder. Unopened. Unapologetic. "He's 19, Caroline continued, "barely out of high school." "He's an adult," Meredith said calmly, "with free tuition, off-campus housing, a stocked fridge, and a $600 shoe rotation, all paid for by me." Her son-in-law Marcus leaned forward, elbows on knees. "But maybe this isn't about money. Maybe this is pride. Yours." Meredith's gaze didn't waver. "My pride isn't what blocked me on every platform." No one spoke for a moment. A single clock ticked near the fireplace. Then Meredith reached forward and opened the folder. Inside, her spreadsheet, color-coded, dated, labeled by year, category, and receipt. She slid it across the table. "That's everything I've paid for since Trevor turned 14. Camps, sneakers, flights, groceries, dentist visits, winter coats, therapy co-pays." Caroline hesitated, then picked up the sheet. Her face paled as she scanned the totals. "I didn't know it was this much." "No one asked," Meredith said, softly. The folder made a quiet thump as Caroline set it down again. "I'm not angry that he's young," Meredith continued. I'm angry that I've apparently taught him love means automatic, unconditional deposits, without respect, without presence, without thanks. Marcus exhaled. But he's under a lot of pressure. The team, school. So was I. Meredith interrupted, voice edged. When I was raising a daughter on a teacher's salary and still making Christmas magical. So was my husband, when we saved every tax refund to start Trevor's college fund early. Pressure doesn't excuse erasure. Caroline's voice caught. You think we failed him? No, Meredith said. I think we failed to teach him that relationships aren't transactions, but they still have terms. She stood slowly, walked to the mantel, and picked up a photo. Her and Trevor on his 10th birthday, frosting on their fingers, laughing. She looked at it for a long beat before setting it face down. I'm not cutting him off emotionally, she said, but I am done funding the silence. Caroline leaned back like she'd been slapped. Mom? No more silent support, no more silent disrespect. Meredith walked toward the front door and opened it, not as an invitation, but as punctuation. If he wants to talk, she said, with a clarity that held no malice, he'll have to knock. Caroline and Marcus exchanged a glance. Neither moved. Then slowly, they stood. Meredith didn't hug them goodbye. She watched them step off the porch and down the walkway. When the car pulled away, she closed the door gently behind her, then turned the photo back over, placed it in the drawer, and locked it. Meredith didn't overthink the reply. Subject, dinner message, come tonight, no yelling, no money talk. She cooked like she always did when she needed grounding, chicken roasted with rosemary, potatoes halved and salted, green beans still crisp at the ends. She set the table for two. No candles, no soft music, just silence that asked to be met honestly. At 6:42 p.m., his car pulled into the driveway. Trevor stepped out in full team gear, branded pullover, joggers, fresh sneakers that probably cost more than her monthly mortgage when she still had one. His gait was confident, but not warm. He didn't hug her at the door, just said, "Hey," and walked in like a guest, not family. She noticed how he scanned the hallway, how his eyes briefly stopped on the photo still turned face down. Dinner was plated. She gestured toward the seat across from her. He sat, elbows on the table, phone face down beside his fork. They ate in near silence for the first few minutes. She chewed slowly, watching him, remembering the boy who used to dunk Oreos into her morning coffee when he thought she wasn't looking. You said I was your legacy, Trevor said suddenly. Meredith didn't answer right away. I meant that, she replied. He set down his fork. Then why does it feel like you're punishing me for one mistake? She looked at him squarely. Is that what this is about? A mistake? You missed the game. You promised. I looked up and... Nothing. I was sick, she said quietly. I texted, called, I couldn't move. And instead of asking if I was okay, you blocked me. He shrugged. I was hurt. People make emotional calls when they're hurt. You didn't make an emotional call, she said. You made a calculated one, and it cost you nothing because you assumed I'd keep paying while you kept erasing. Trevor pushed back from the table slightly. You think this is all about money? No, she said. But I do think it revealed how little you see me. He scoffed, then leaned in. You told me I was your legacy, that everything you worked for was so I could succeed. You said that. I did, she said. But what part of me is in you when you block me over one missed game, when your first instinct isn't concern or grace, but exile? He tapped his fingers on the table, avoiding her eyes. You don't understand what it's like on that team. Everyone's watching. One wrong move, one person lets you down. Let you down? Meredith's voice didn't rise. If anything, it became steadier. Trevor, I've sat through snow delays and 4-hour drives just to watch you miss free throws. I clapped anyway. He stood up now, pushing the chair back hard. You're not part of the team, he said. You're background. You don't know how it is now. The silence after that word, background, hung like a curtain being drawn across a window. Meredith blinked once. Then again. Her chest didn't rise. Her lips didn't part. She just smiled. Software final. Unmoved. He stared at her like he expected a storm or a slap or a tear, but she simply said, "Thank you for dinner. You can take the leftovers." Trevor hesitated, but when she didn't move to stop him, he grabbed the Tupperware and walked to the door. She didn't follow. The door clicked shut. His car started. Headlights swept the curtains, then disappeared. Meredith sat for a long time. Then rose, walked to her office, opened the bottom drawer of her file cabinet, and pulled out her estate binder. She flipped to the page with Trevor's name, took a pen, and drew a slow, deliberate line through it. Below it, in tidy print, she wrote, "To be reassigned, pending demonstration of character." Meredith sat at her kitchen table just after sunrise, the house still heavy with quiet. She sipped lukewarm coffee and stared at the legal pad in front of her, its top line carefully underlined, what it actually cost. The pen in her hand didn't tremble. It moved with the rhythm of someone who had balanced checkbooks before apps, who could recall prices by year, like milestones. One by one, she listed them: youth league fees, summer basketball camps, out-of-state travel, hotel rooms, private trainers. There were shoes, at least 2 pairs per season, braces, physical therapy, protein powders, team dinners, SAT prep courses, groceries, gas money, the noise-canceling headphones he said he needed for focus. Her total was not a guess. It was a summation, $164,228.49. She rewrote it in ink beneath a short note. "Trevor, this isn't an invoice. You don't owe it back. But you should know what was spent to keep you moving forward, even when I was standing behind you. Not for guilt, for clarity. MJ." She folded the letter, placed it in a plain envelope, and wrote his campus mailing address in her steadiest handwriting. She didn't seal it with emotion, just a small square of tape. The following afternoon, Meredith walked to the local post office and dropped it in the outbound mail slot. The paper made a soft sound as it slid down the chute, something between a whisper and a closing door. She didn't wait for a reply. She didn't expect one. That same week, she accepted an invitation from the community college volunteer coordinator to sit in on a student mentorship orientation. The room smelled faintly of old binders and vending machine coffee. Plastic chairs were arranged in a circle, most already filled with students, some still in scrubs from late shifts, others in hoodies that had seen better decades. One young man in the corner caught her eye. He looked barely 19, maybe 20. Skin the color of toasted sugar, short fade haircut, dark circles under his eyes that spoke louder than his words. When the instructor asked each student to introduce themselves, he said, "Carlos, business major. I work mornings at the car wash and nights at the UPS warehouse." He said it plainly, like it wasn't impressive, but Meredith heard the grind in his voice, the steadiness, the same kind of steadiness she'd once fought to instill in Trevor. During the break, she approached the program director quietly. "Does Carlos have book funding this semester?" The woman frowned. "Not yet. He applied, but the emergency pool's low." "Can I fund it?" Meredith asked. The woman looked at her. "You want to sponsor him directly?" "No," Meredith said. "Anonymously." That night, Meredith sat on her back porch as the sun dropped below the fence line, her glass of iced tea melting into its coaster. Her phone buzzed on the side table. Unknown number. One new message. "Carlos. I don't know who helped, but thank you. I didn't tell my mom I was short this semester. She'd have sold her sewing machine." Meredith stared at the screen, her heart still. No flood of tears, no cinematic swell. Just a quiet, unmistakable shift inside her. Something let go. Something that had been gripping the edge of disappointment and calling it loyalty. She didn't reply. She didn't have to. Instead, she closed the message, turned the phone face down, and looked out over her yard. The porch light flickered once, then held steady. Somewhere a train horn moaned in the distance. She whispered aloud, not to anyone in particular. "That's what legacy looks like." Then she stood, walked inside, and pulled out a fresh legal pad. Tomorrow she'd draft a new section of her will. Not a removal. A replacement. The notification came on a Tuesday afternoon. Meredith had just returned from the library, a stack of financial literacy books balanced in one hand, her keys in the other. She set the books down on the entryway table and glanced at her phone. 3 unread texts, all from people she hadn't heard from in months. Diane from book club. Hey Meredith, just saw Trevor's fundraiser. Is everything okay between you two? Linda, her old PTA co-chair. I don't want to pry, but that GoFundMe made you sound, well, not like the woman I know. Paul from church. Saw your grandson's page? If you need anything, even just someone to talk to, I'm around. Her heart didn't race. It didn't even ache. It cooled, like an ember being doused. She opened the link one of them had forwarded. GoFundMe. Help Me Stay in School, by Trevor Jameson. The banner photo was of Trevor in his jersey, eyes full of some camera-trained sorrow. The page was well written, too well written, clearly edited, maybe even rehearsed. After a sudden and unexplained financial cutoff from my grandmother, who had previously supported my education, I'm now in danger of losing housing and my place on the team. I've always worked hard and never asked for much. I guess love really does come with conditions. Below it, comments were already rolling in, strangers donating in $10, $25, even $100 increments. What kind of grandmother does this? Hang in there, kid. You deserve better. She sounds toxic AF. Cut her out forever. Meredith read each one. Not in a daze, not in rage, just quietly. She didn't call her daughter. She didn't text Trevor. Instead, she took a screenshot of the page. Then another and another. Each donation, each sentence carefully documented. She created a folder on her desktop, narrative theft. Then she opened a blank document and began to type. The cost of silence, when giving turns to guilt. Her fingers didn't hesitate. She detailed the numbers, not just in dollars, but in hours. The car rides, the meal prep, the nights spent helping him memorize playbooks, quiz history dates, fix broken zippers on duffel bags before game day. She never named Trevor. She never insulted him. She simply laid out the truth. Then came the core of it. They say when you set boundaries, people show you who they really are. But sometimes, they try to show the world who you're not. Silence was my mistake. Silence became permission. This is me revoking it. She hit publish on her personal blog, one she hadn't updated in years, and then linked it to a modest Facebook page she used only to follow old friends and gardening pages. She didn't expect anyone to read it. By morning, it had 12,000 views. By that afternoon, it had tripled. The comments were different than the ones on Trevor's fundraiser. I went through the exact same thing with my grandson. I thought I was alone. Thank you. I've never heard someone put it so clearly. I needed this. Please write more. This is happening to all of us. Emails began trickling in from readers. Some signed, some anonymous. The stories varied. Cut-off parents, manipulated grandparents, elders guilted into financial support with the threat of estrangement. Meredith read each one, not for validation, for momentum. The next week she opened a new Word document and titled it, Emotional Entitlement and Financial Abuse, a Survival Guide for Givers. She outlined chapters, boundaries, red flags, legal tools, emotional ones. She wasn't a therapist, but she was a retired educator, and teaching was second nature. This time the curriculum was self-worth. She paused, leaned back in her chair, and reached for her mug of lukewarm tea. The headline of Trevor's GoFundMe still lingered in her mind, Love with Conditions. She spoke aloud, just once. Love isn't the condition. Respect is. Then she went back to typing. Outside, the sky darkened early. A storm was building, low thunder grumbling in the distance. Inside, Meredith wrote on, clear, steady, and unafraid of being seen. The voice-only interview aired on a Thursday. Meredith had agreed to it reluctantly after a quiet call with a young journalist from the local NPR affiliate. He'd read her blog, tracked her email down, and pitched the segment in a tone of curious respect. It would be anonymous, he'd promised. Just your voice. No names, no photos. The theme is elder financial boundaries. She hadn't said yes right away, but something in her had already started shedding shame like old skin. And so she agreed, On one condition: she would write her own script. She recorded it in a single take, sitting at her kitchen table, reading from neatly printed note cards. "My name isn't important," the segment began, her voice measured, warm but steel-laced. "But what I did was fund love. Groceries, tuition, rent. I gave until I thought giving was the same as being loved back. I was wrong." She didn't cry. She didn't name Trevor. But she told the story. Blocked without warning, made invisible by the same hands she once held steady through childhood. "I didn't get angry," her voice continued. "I got clear. And when I stopped paying, I started seeing." The broadcast was 5 minutes long. It aired at 8:12 a.m. and again during the evening drive. By 10 a.m., her inbox had 57 new messages. By evening, it was close to 300. She didn't read them all at once, just a few, one by one, while sipping chamomile tea and listening to a light rain tap the kitchen window. "Your words gave me the courage to say no to my son. I haven't spoken to my daughter since she accused me of being selfish, for retiring. I thought I was alone. I thought maybe I was crazy. Thank you for proving I'm not." The next morning, Meredith went to the grocery store for eggs, oatmeal, and soap. She wore no makeup, a cardigan over a plain blouse. As she turned down the canned goods aisle, 2 older women passed her, each with a small cart. One of them made eye contact, then the other. They didn't stop, didn't speak, but they both nodded, slow, knowing, respectful. Meredith didn't nod back, not immediately. Her eyes lingered on theirs for half a second longer than expected. Then she smiled and kept walking. That afternoon, she got another ping from her email. Subject: reporting concern. GoFundMe page. Apparently, someone had flagged Trevor's fundraiser as containing misleading or false information. Meredith didn't know who did it. Maybe one of the readers, maybe more than one. The page was taken down before nightfall. No update, no apology, just gone. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt restored. That night, she sat at her desk with a fresh stack of note cards for her next chapter draft. Her phone buzzed once beside her. She reached for it without urgency. From Community Scholarships at ccfoundation.org. Subject: application received. Emergency hardship grant. The message was brief. Applicant: Carlos Mendoza. Age 19. Major business request fall semester materials funding. Note from applicant: I'm trying to carry what my mom carried for me. I just can't carry all of it yet. Meredith blinked once. She didn't smile. She inhaled, slow and steady, the kind of breath that reaches old wounds and quietly stitches them. She leaned back in her chair, eyes resting on the window, where night had already draped itself across her yard. Carlos. She remembered the way he spoke at orientation. Clear, no fluff. She remembered the exhaustion under his eyes and the spine that refused to bend. She whispered to herself, "That's the voice I believe in." Then she opened a new tab, found the foundation's internal access point, and quietly approved the full grant. Tomorrow she would write him a note. Anonymous again. But this time she'd sign it with one word: still here. She didn't know if he'd ever find out it was her. She didn't care. She just knew. A new voice was rising, and this time it was louder than hers had ever been. Meredith's phone rang 3 times that morning. Each call was from the same number, her daughter's. Each one was ignored, not in anger, but in resolve. She didn't listen to the voicemail. She didn't need to. The tone was always the same, tired justification wrapped in soft guilt. She slipped the phone into her drawer, closed it with care, and walked back to the bedroom to change. The game was at 1 p.m., a Saturday matinee for the local development league. The gym wasn't fancy. Folding bleachers, a concession stand with nacho cheese that probably hadn't been changed since last season, but Meredith had come to appreciate its humility. No flashing lights, no sponsorship deals, just sweat, grit, and a scoreboard that didn't care who your grandmother was. She wore navy slacks and a cardigan stitched with tiny buttons. Not overdressed, not underdressed, just prepared. In her purse she carried 2 things: her checkbook and a printed document with a single name at the top: Carlos Mendoza. She arrived early, Her seat was in the third row this time, not quite courtside, but close enough to hear the sneaker squeaks and shouted plays. The bleachers were dotted with parents, friends, a few scouts who sat with folded arms and blank expressions. When Carlos took the court, she almost didn't recognize him. He moved differently now, more assured, more fluid. The dark circles beneath his eyes were still there, but they'd softened. His jersey hung a little looser. His shoulders stood a little straighter. She watched him sink a three-pointer early in the first quarter. The crowd clapped. Meredith didn't cheer. She just smiled, a small, private thing. At halftime, Carlos passed by her row on the way to the locker room. He didn't break stride, didn't wave, but he saw her. His eyes met hers. He mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." Meredith gave the smallest nod in return. That was enough. After the game, victory by 6 points, she didn't stay for the crowd shuffle or post-game noise. Instead, she made her way quietly to the administrative wing, where the bursar's office was still open for donors and post-season paperwork. She handed the envelope to the assistant behind the glass. "This is for Carlos Mendoza," she said. "It's a seed fund for his continued education, stipulated for books, tuition, or relocation support. No strings." The woman blinked, confused. "Are you family?" Meredith smiled. "Not by blood, but I've paid in full." She didn't wait for a receipt. That evening, back home with slippers on and tea steeping beside her, Meredith called her attorney. The man knew her voice by now, answered with a warmth that had grown familiar. "Ready for the next revision?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "Carlos Mendoza, scholarship beneficiary. Add him to the education clause. Make it official. And Trevor?" She paused. "Leave him frozen." "Understood." They exchanged no more than a few logistical words before hanging up. Meredith walked to her computer, logged into her social media account, the one she rarely used except for family updates and garden photos. The profile bio had once read, "Proud grandmother, retired educator, NBA fan." She hit edit, deleted the line, typed, "Former grandma, current legend," saved. That night she slept soundly. No late texts, no missed calls she cared about. But before she turned in, she lit the candle on her nightstand, let it flicker for a moment, and looked across the room at a framed photo of her and a much younger Trevor at a spelling bee, his arms around her neck, both of them laughing. She didn't remove it. But she turned it inward, toward the wall. She whispered one sentence as she clicked off the light. "Love doesn't live here rent-free anymore." Then she closed her eyes. And somewhere, in another part of town, Carlos checked his email. A notice of a newly opened education grant waited for him. It was dusk when Meredith heard the knock, 3 hard, hurried raps against the storm door. Not the polite kind, the kind that came with urgency, with youth, with someone who hadn't been taught to wait. She set down her teacup slowly and rose from the armchair. She knew that knock, had known it since he was 3 and too impatient to ask properly for cookies. Through the front window, she saw him. Trevor stood on the porch in a hoodie, sleeves pushed to the elbows, his eyes restless. Not angry, not smug, just off balance. One hand in his pocket, the other clenched at his side. She opened the wooden door but left the storm door locked between them. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he said, "I shouldn't have posted that fundraiser. I was pissed, broke, embarrassed. I didn't mean it the way it looked." Meredith didn't react. Her face was neutral, tired maybe, but clear. He stepped closer, palm resting against the cold glass. "Can we just talk? Please?" "We're talking," she said softly. He blinked. "I meant inside." She shook her head once. "Not." Yet Trevor glanced down at the porch, then back up at her. "I get it. I messed up. But it's not like I hate you. You're the only real parent I've had." Meredith's hands didn't move. "Then you should have treated me like one." He exhaled hard, rubbed his forehead. "I was scared. I didn't think you'd really cut me off." "You weren't scared," she replied, her voice low but sharp. "You were certain I'd keep paying, no matter what. You bet on me staying silent." "I didn't mean it like that." She tilted her head slightly. You taught me what I meant to you the second I became less useful. His eyes welled. Not performative. Not dramatic. The real kind. The kind that made a boy of a man again. You still love me, don't you? Meredith's throat was dry, but her reply was immediate. I do. But I love myself more now. For a moment, something fragile passed between them, like a single thread stretched too tight to hold. Then suddenly Trevor's face crumpled. His fist hit the storm door, not hard enough to break it, but loud enough to be final. He turned, stormed down the steps, his shoulders hunched and paced too fast to be collected. She didn't call out to him. She didn't follow. She watched him drive away from behind the door, headlights throwing brief shadows across her porch before disappearing into the dark. Only then did she close the wooden door and turn the lock. She walked calmly back to her desk, pulled out the manila folder labeled Education Support, and flipped it open. The university's contact number was printed in bold at the top of the first page. She dialed. A pause. Then a voice answered, Office of Financial Aid, this is Janice. Hello, Janice, Meredith said evenly. This is Meredith Jameson. I'm calling to confirm a full and permanent withdrawal of all future payments associated with Trevor Jameson's account. Janice stammered a bit. You mean for the next semester or? All semesters, Meredith said. Effective immediately. Please send written confirmation. Understood, the woman said. Would you like us to notify the student? No, Meredith replied. He already knows. She hung up. For a long while she sat in stillness. No music, no TV. Just the sound of the grandfather clock in the hallway marking off minutes like a metronome for a new rhythm. Eventually she rose, walked to the front door again, not to look out, but to reset the latch. She tested it twice. As she turned back toward the kitchen, she passed the mirror in the hall. For a brief second, she caught her own reflection, not softened by nostalgia or grief, but edged with something unfamiliar. Certainty. From the kitchen table, her phone vibrated. One last attempt. Another missed call from her daughter. Meredith reached for the phone and powered it off. The conference room smelled faintly of lemon polish and old folding chairs. A long table held mugs of weak coffee, name tags, and a stack of purple pamphlets reading, Reclaiming Voice, Intergenerational Boundaries and Worth. Meredith adjusted the mic stand at the podium. It wobbled slightly, like nerves given form. She wasn't nervous. She was ready. The moderator, a tall woman in her 60s with a clipped gray bob and a voice that could command silence, introduced her simply, Our next speaker is Meredith Jameson, retired educator, guardian, author, advocate. She'll be reading from her upcoming guide, Emotional Entitlement and Financial Abuse. The applause was polite, not thunderous, but open. Meredith stepped to the microphone. The room was fuller than she expected. Grandparents with folded hands, middle-aged parents with pursed lips, even a few adult children who looked equal parts curious and cautious, clutching notebooks or phones. She unfolded her pages and began. My name is Meredith. For years I believed that love was synonymous with giving. If you loved someone, you gave. Money, time, energy, your body when they were young, your silence when they got older. No one moved. I funded a future for someone who once called me his legacy. I paid tuition, housing, groceries. I planned birthdays he stopped showing up for. And when I got sick, when I missed one game, I was blocked across every platform, not ghosted, deleted. A murmur rippled. Soft, shocked, familiar. I didn't stop loving him. I stopped paying for the privilege of being erased. She glanced up. People were leaning forward now, some with misted eyes. One man in the back pulled out a handkerchief and pressed it to his temple. I want to read something from my manuscript, she said. She turned a page. Her voice remained firm, but a rawness had crept in, earned, not performed. Boundaries are not rejection. They are recognition. I can love you and still choose myself. I can remember every meal I packed for you, every night I stayed up when you cried, and still not fund your silence. If love is conditional, it isn't the one drawing the boundary who broke the deal. Silence fell again, thicker this time. One woman near the front reached for her neighbor's hand. Meredith closed her folder gently. When I stopped paying, I got my clarity back, and eventually, my purpose. She didn't plan to end it that way, but there was nothing left to say. The room stood, not all at once, but in a slow, rising wave. First a row, then another. Applause began timidly, then grew into something sustained, sincere. One woman near the middle wiped her eyes and clapped harder. Meredith bowed her head. She didn't smile. Not yet. Not until she saw Carlos. He was near the back, standing beside a row of empty chairs. He looked taller than she remembered, more filled in, less hollowed by work and debt. He made his way to her, weaving past nodding strangers and handshakes she didn't have time to return. When he reached her, he didn't ask. He just wrapped her in a hug, tight, sure, grateful. Into her shoulder, he whispered, "I'm the grandson I wish you got." That's when it happened. Not a sob, not a breakdown, just a single traitorous tear that rolled down Meredith's cheek and fell onto the collar of his shirt. She didn't apologize for it, didn't explain it away. Carlos pulled back, his hands still on her arms. "You good?" he asked. Meredith smiled finally. "Better than I've been in years." He nodded. "Let's get lunch. I'm buying." She laughed, short and real. "As long as it's not nacho cheese from the concession stand." They stepped away from the podium together, the room still echoing with applause that had only just started to fade. And far behind them, on the wall where speaker bios were pinned, someone had added a post-it next to Meredith's name. 4 words: voice, spine, grace, legend. The next section awaited. But this moment, this one, was hers. It started with a clean draft and a quiet morning. Meredith placed her mug beside the keyboard and opened the manuscript that had, for months, lived in scattered folders and half-marked legal pads. But now it had a title, one that had arrived one evening like breath drawn between 2 sentences. Courtside alone. What I gained when I stopped paying to stay loved. Her editor, a woman younger than Caroline, sharp-eyed and gentle-spoken, had called it deceptively calm. Said it read like a memoir and a mirror. "You don't shout," she'd told Meredith during their first meeting, "but I hear every word." The book took shape over the next 6 weeks. Drafts were honed, footnotes tightened, anecdotes trimmed. Meredith wrote with the precision of someone who'd graded essays for 3 decades, but the heart of someone who had finally stopped apologizing for needing something in return. When the pre-launch page went live on a Friday, Meredith didn't tell anyone. She simply posted a link to her modest blog, then closed the laptop and went outside to water the garden. By Sunday, the publisher emailed in shock, thousands of pre-orders, dozens of requests from advocacy networks, a message from the National Coalition for Elder Autonomy asking if she would consider speaking at their annual summit. She didn't answer right away, not because she was unsure, but because she'd learned not to rush clarity. That same Sunday evening, Meredith's phone buzzed on the table. One text, from Caroline. It wasn't long. "We didn't see you. I'm sorry." No deflections, no excuses, just truth, finally spoken. Meredith stared at the screen, thumb hovering above the keyboard. Her heart did something unfamiliar. It didn't race or ache. It settled. She typed back, "Thank you. I still need time." Then she turned the phone over and walked to the kitchen. That night, she sat at her desk and signed the final publishing contract. The last page included an author's note space. Optional, her editor had said. Meredith filled it in without hesitation. "To those who gave until they forgot their names, may you remember yourselves here." 2 days later, she planted the tree. It was a young dogwood, not yet tall enough to shade the yard, but sturdy at its base and flexible at its edges. A tree that knew how to bend before it broke. She dug the hole herself. Slow work, but honest. Dirt under fingernails, knees pressed into grass. A full hour under the sun until her back ached and her breath steadied. Once the root ball was set, she reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out the small envelope she'd folded days before. Inside was the last photo she had kept on display. Trevor at age 13, arms around her shoulders after a win, cheeks still soft with boyhood. She stared at it one last time. Not bitter, not broken, just resolved. She kissed the top edge once and lowered it into the earth. Over it she packed the dirt gently, then firmed it with the flat of her palms. She stood, brushed her jeans clean, and whispered aloud, "New roots." The sun dipped low behind the neighbor's fence, casting the tree in slanting gold light. A breeze moved through its leaves like a quiet exhale. Inside the house, the laptop dinged with a fresh round of reader messages. Carlos had emailed, "2, just one line. Let me know when I can pre-order the next one." She didn't reply, not yet. Instead, she stood at the kitchen window and watched the tree. It was hers now, not a symbol, but a stake. A living, growing reminder that healing didn't require return. Only intention. And deep below the soil, under dogwood roots and spring earth, rested the only piece of Trevor she was still willing to carry. A memory buried. A boundary kept. A love released. The email arrived late, 1:12 a.m., time-stamped in pale gray beneath the sender's name, Trevor Jameson. Meredith saw it the next morning while watering the herb pots along her kitchen windowsill. She had been halfway through misting the time when the soft ping echoed from her phone on the counter. She wiped her hands, picked up the device, and saw the subject line. No excuses. Just read. She didn't tap it. Didn't even preview the body. Instead, she placed the phone face down, walked to her study, and powered on the printer. The machine chugged to life with its familiar startup hum. Meredith opened her email, selected the message, and clicked print. The paper fed through slowly, ink drying as the message formed line by line. She didn't read it. Not a single word. Instead, she slipped the page into a clear sheet protector, then filed it inside a blue binder marked Archive, Memoir Materials. It joined the others, letters, invoices, annotated drafts, artifacts of her becoming. She returned to her tea. That same week, Carlos graduated, 6 months early. He stood at the podium in a pressed navy suit, the tassel on his cap flicking with each nod of humility as he thanked faculty, donors, and the mother he'd once feared disappointing. And he brought her to meet Meredith. It was a Sunday afternoon, warm for April. Meredith had made iced tea and lemon bars, laid them out on the patio table beneath the striped umbrella she only opened for company. Carlos arrived with a bouquet his mother insisted on carrying, pale daisies, hand-wrapped in butcher paper and twine. His mother was short, soft-spoken, dressed in clean lines and Sunday shoes. "This is the woman I told you about," Carlos said to her, voice low but proud. Meredith stood to greet her. Carlos's mother took Meredith's hands in hers and held them a moment longer than strangers usually do. Her eyes filled as she said, "I never got to do this, with the people who helped my son. Thank you for letting me." Meredith's throat tightened. She didn't force words. She just nodded, smiled, and squeezed back. They sat for over an hour, sipping slowly and sharing stories not just of hardship, but of what came after, of the things that bloomed when shame no longer lived at the center. That night, Meredith received a call from her editor, breathless with news. "You won't believe this," she said. "We just got approval for a second print run, and, wait for it, Oprah Daily's listing you as a must-read for financial freedom, front page of their online section." Meredith leaned against the kitchen counter, phone tucked between shoulder and cheek, staring out into her darkened backyard. The dogwood tree had begun to blossom, tiny clusters of white petals glowing like stars. "Are you excited?" her editor asked. Meredith exhaled, a smile forming beneath it. "I'm grounded." The next morning, she and Carlos met again at a quiet cafe near the community center. He had a letter in his hands, a folded piece of paper with an embossed logo on the envelope. "I got an offer," he said, barely able to contain it. "A finance training program. Full ride, relocation covered." Meredith beamed. "That's a start." He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "It's because of you." "No," she said gently but firmly. "It's because you didn't let being under-resourced become underwhelming." He laughed. "That sounds like a line from your next book." She raised her eyebrows. "Maybe it is." As they stood to leave, he hesitated. "You ever gonna read that message from Trevor?" he asked, not with judgment, just the curiosity of someone who hadn't yet been hardened by too many goodbyes. Meredith placed a few dollars in the tip jar, adjusted her coat, and met his gaze. "I already did," she said, tapping her temple. "I know what it says. But knowing and reopening are two different things." They walked outside together, breeze mild, sky streaked with soft pastels, and at that moment, a new notification buzzed on Meredith's phone. This one wasn't from Trevor. It was from a major publishing house. Subject: "Have you considered a follow-up? Our nonfiction editor is interested." Meredith paused at the curb, smiled, and whispered, "Let's see what the next chapter pays." The office wasn't large, just 2 rooms over a coffee shop downtown with scuffed baseboards and a lingering scent of cinnamon, but Meredith liked it. The walls were bare for now, save for a whiteboard and a brass plaque by the door that read, "The Jameson Foundation for Independent Futures." She hadn't chosen the name lightly. Legacy, she'd learned, wasn't about lineage. It was about impact. Reach. What stayed behind long after you stopped asking for recognition. The foundation had one purpose: to fund students who had been quietly discarded, financially cut off, emotionally punished for boundaries, or simply left to fend alone once they no longer proved convenient. Applicants could nominate themselves, no references required. Just a story. Her first grant went to a young woman named Keisha, who had aged out of foster care mid-semester and was sleeping in her car between night shifts. The second went to a boy named Eli, whose parents believed depression was laziness and had refused to pay for his therapy, much less his textbooks. Meredith didn't ask for thank yous. She asked for receipts. She reviewed every application personally, cross-checking needs, making sure the stories weren't just sad, they were real. When a podcast producer reached out from Elder Equity Now, Meredith almost declined. But the host, an ex-social worker turned financial advocate, sent her a message that changed her mind. "You gave shape to something we've all felt but didn't know how to say." So she agreed, voice only again, 1 mic, 1 hour. The episode was titled "Financial Loyalty versus Emotional Abuse: Where We Draw the Line." Meredith spoke slowly, clearly. She told parts of her story she hadn't even included in the book. Nights spent reloading prepaid meal cards after being blocked, memories of sitting alone on bleachers that once held her place as a legacy's witness. She wasn't bitter. She was crystalline. "You can love someone," she said, "and still refuse to be their collateral damage. You can stop paying, not because you've stopped caring, but because you finally started." The podcast released on a Thursday. By Sunday night, it had 312,000 streams. Comments flooded in across every platform. "This gave language to our pain. I forwarded this to my mom. She cried. Then we talked. Blocked by my own son for saying no. Now I feel less alone." In the middle of the comment feed, one donation pinged through the foundation's site, anonymous, but the billing name appeared faintly on the back end. Caroline J. Marcus J. $3,000. No note. Meredith didn't call them. She simply logged the amount, marked it as unrestricted, and filed it under a new subfund she'd just opened that week: Bridges and Rebuilds. That night, she updated her will again. Her lawyer, now used to her precise revisions, listened quietly as she read off the changes. Every remaining asset, monetary or property, is to be divided among active beneficiaries of the Jameson Foundation. No dormant accounts, no frozen clauses. Every dollar has a job. He nodded as he typed. "That everything?" Meredith hesitated, then added, "And one request for the executor. When they distribute the final funds, include this note." She handed him a typed page. He scanned it. "You sure you want this read aloud?" "Yes," she said, "because I won't be the only one in that room who needed to hear it." Later, alone in her study, Meredith opened the manuscript file again. The memoir had long been finished, long been published, long been shelved in libraries and passed between book clubs, but she hadn't yet written its last page. Now she did. A single chapter, no subtitle, no apology. It read, "If they block you, build something they can never reach." Build doors they don't hold keys to, windows they'll only hear about, not to shut them out, but to finally see yourself from the inside. She clicked save. Outside, the dogwood tree swayed in the wind, its white petals lifting, falling, rising again. Inside, Meredith closed her laptop. The story wasn't over, but it was finally hers. The arena shimmered under its own spectacle, jumbotrons glowing, spotlights sweeping across rows of faces lit by foam fingers and overpriced soda. It was Game 3 of the Western Conference playoffs, and every seat in the lower bowl had been claimed by someone expecting a story. Meredith Jamieson didn't expect one. She simply came to witness. Her ticket had arrived months ago, tucked in an envelope with a handwritten note from a team liaison, a token of gratitude from someone who never forgot who saw him first. No return address, no signature, just 2 tickets. Courtside, no guest required. She arrived in tailored navy slacks, a crisp white blouse, and a silk scarf knotted at the collarbone. Her silver hair was swept into a low bun. She wore no team colors, no badge of allegiance, only dignity. When the camera panned to her, row 1, center, she didn't wave. She simply smiled. Not to the crowd, to herself. In her handbag was a single item besides her wallet, a folded, yellowing copy of the tuition check she'd written for Trevor's freshman year, the one that had never been acknowledged, never reimbursed, never even returned in conversation. She hadn't brought it for sentiment. It was there as proof of distance traveled, a receipt not of loss, but of release. The buzzer rang for warm-ups. Players jogged onto the court in crisp sneakers, headphones tugged down around their necks. One figure lingered behind the bench, tying his shoes with calm precision. Carlos Mendoza. Now number 22. Rookie, but not timid, his face on the jumbotron for a full 3 seconds before it cut to the team's logo. Meredith sipped her wine, rosé, chilled, served in a plastic cup that tried to look like glass, and watched him stretch at the sideline. At one point he glanced into the crowd. His eyes landed on her for a flicker, not long, but enough. He gave a subtle chin nod. She returned it, calm, reserved, proud. No signs, no shouting, just recognition. That's the kind of grandson I funded. She didn't say it aloud. She didn't need to. But she felt the words settle in her chest like a slow, sure exhale. The kind that doesn't rush to be heard, only to be felt. Around her, fans roared as the lights dimmed and the national anthem played. Meredith stood with the crowd, hand resting lightly at her side, not over her heart. Her heart was no longer something she offered up blindly. It was something she honored in private. The anthem ended. The crowd sat. The game began. She didn't pull out her phone, didn't check the box score. She watched. Full attention. Present. She watched Carlos snag a rebound with fingers he used to wrap around discount textbooks. She watched him pass without flair, defend without ego. She watched him earn every second of court time. And she knew what it had cost him, not just in hours or dollars, but in silence, in unseen sacrifices that never made the highlight reel. At halftime, an usher offered to refill her drink. She declined, her cup still cool in her hands. During the third quarter, the camera swept the courtside row again. A young woman in front of her waved frantically. A couple beside her lifted their toddler toward the lens. Meredith stayed seated, still smiling, still solo. In the fourth quarter, Carlos nailed a step-back jumper. The crowd erupted. Meredith didn't. She just closed her eyes for a beat, opened them, and nodded once. The final buzzer sounded. Victory by 10, but she didn't rise with the rush of bodies. She waited. She watched Carlos fist-bump teammates, nod at staff, then jog off court without ceremony. As if it was just another game, not another chapter. And when the arena began to empty, Meredith reached into her bag and unfolded that old tuition check. She smoothed it flat across her knee. Read it once, then gently, deliberately, tore it in half, not in bitterness, in finality. Outside, the air was warm and smelled faintly of popcorn. A mother rushed past her with a boy on her hip and a foam finger tucked under one arm. Meredith stepped aside, let them pass. She didn't rush, didn't need to. That night she returned home to the soft hum of her porch light and the steady branches of the dogwood tree, now in full bloom. She poured one last glass of wine, sat by the window, and looked out over everything she had rebuilt from the ground up. No phone buzzed, no message appeared, no reconciliation forced its way in, and for the first time in years, she didn't ache for one. She didn't get unblocked. She got free.